We'll go to Representative Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and General, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Representative.
Just like you, when you were on this committee and working in the House, I'm sure you read everything that was put in front of you, and I did read your booklet, and I did read your little letter, your introductory statement as well. And I'm going to quote from it that you are mindful of the need to do more with less in a challenging fiscal environment. And the OAG is vigorously seeking ways to streamline operations, find efficiencies, and achieve savings. I'm sorry. Sure. Given this statement and the fiscal constraints that you know we're under in the Commonwealth, how can you justify your request for additional $17.1 million? And I do understand the request, especially with your guest here as well, that for more money for the opioid epidemic and problems there, which in my calculation is about $6 million out of the $17.1 million increase. So if you can tell me how balancing that statement, how you can justify that Sure. increase.
Representative, I'll make 3 points. The first point is this. I stood a moment ago at the request of the chairman to take an oath to tell the truth. And what I put forward here today is a truthful, honest budget. I took office, and what I did was immediately assess the responsibilities we have in the office and the needs we have in the office and the cost that it would take to go out and meet those needs, whether it's protecting children online, whether it's dealing with the heroin epidemic, whether it's dealing with the statutory obligations we have to represent the Commonwealth. And I put forth a number to this committee that I thought reflected that. Now, I have a very different job than, and I say this with the utmost respect, than you do. Your job is to deal with the budget deficit that you have and all of the different interests. My job is to fight like heck for my agency and make sure that we have the resources to go out and fight for the people of Pennsylvania. And so I put forth a budget that reflects that. Now, I also recognize that I have a responsibility, just like everyone does in a position of responsibility in the government, to try and do more with less and to try and streamline as much as we can. I've got a track record doing this. You know, when I left the House of Representatives, I went to Montgomery County, where Representative Briggs and Representative Dean are from, where Representative Camp represents as well. And I could tell you that spending the day I left in year 5 was lower than the rate of spending in year 1 that I inherited. Meaning I know how to streamline a government and make it work more effectively and efficiently. And I intend to do that in the Office of Attorney General, but not at the expense of going out and dealing with violence in our communities, protecting kids, protecting seniors, dealing with scams. So here's what we're going to do. We've immediately begun an analysis of our fleet to figure out ways in which we can save money there. We've immediately begun an analysis of our complement to see, while we're adding positions in important areas like dealing with the heroin epidemic, we're also going to look to subtract in other areas where we could be more efficient. Investing in technology, I have found that when you invest in technology, you can save a good bit of money on the back end. And this may come as a surprise to some of the members of this committee, because I know that it's been an issue that you all have cared about. I think we should try and curtail the use of outside counsel as much as possible and reduce our overhead there. Again, I have experience working in this area. When I took over in Montgomery County, we had 2 or 3 full-time solicitors and millions of dollars in outside counsel fees. I said, well, let's try and maybe have 10 or a dozen or so in-house lawyers, because I think then we can reduce our reliance on outside counsel. And in fact, by the end, we were spending maybe $100,000, $200,000 a year at most on outside counsel.
General, with all due respect, I am going to cut you off right there, because the one nice thing about here now is Stan puts me on a clock.
Okay.
and I really do appreciate what you're saying. I really do. And at the same time, though, we've heard from other agencies. We heard from General DePasquale about doing more with less, and the numbers are there. So do you believe that you can get that number down? Is that what you're telling me?
What I believe is, if you make the investments that I'm asking you to make, that I can demonstrate real savings, both administratively and in terms of the additional revenue I can bring into this Commonwealth, which is, you know, sort of savings, if you will, and that it goes back to the general fund or goes back to an agency. And then I think I can prove that empirically next year when I appear before this committee. But I don't think I can do that without additional resources coming into our office and allowing us to be able to do this important work.
And I appreciate you fighting for your office. I do. One other quick question. In your materials, both in your pre-prepared materials and your statement, there's a reference to providing $425 million, I believe, towards the Commonwealth, essentially returning back 3 point some times what your actual cost is. I went through the budget book, tried to figure it all out, and what I came up with is like 300 and some million of that being a tobacco settlement from 2001. And I could only find another 20 million is all the rest I could find. Can you tell me what else I'm missing there?
I sure can. For every dollar that is invested in the Office of Attorney General, we return $3.30 to the Commonwealth. Now, in fairness, there's some examples where we're not returning anything.
Yeah.
When I send someone out to do a drug bust, we're not necessarily returning money to the Commonwealth. But in our Public Protection Division, for example, we are. Let me enumerate the specific areas and how we come up with that 425. 339 million of that is the tobacco money that comes in. And it is really important to note, Representative, this is not a direct deposit. This doesn't just automatically happen. We litigate these issues. In fact, we're in the midst of litigating the 2004 allotment to the Commonwealth right now. The more effective we are at managing that process, the more dollars that come into the Commonwealth. In addition to that, we've collected $55 million in financial enforcement and collections. That's an area, Representative, Mr. Chairman, that I believe we can do better in, and that's why we're seeking some additional personnel to do that, and I think next year that number can be higher. We returned $25 million in Medicaid fraud to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. $5 million came in from the Public Protection Division. Let me just explain a little bit on how that public protection money works, because it goes up and down each year. And maybe I can use an example from a case that is settled that'll be in the next fiscal year. We brought in, I'll be very quick on this, Representative, we brought in $19 million as a result of a settlement with Moody's. 19 million of that, 19 and change, 19 million of that goes back to state agencies. About 340,000 of that comes to the Office of Attorney General. When we settle one of these cases, the dollars essentially fit into three different buckets. One bucket is money for the general fund or state agencies. One bucket is what comes back in sort of legal costs or what have you to the Office of Attorney General. And the other bucket is what comes back to individual taxpayers, folks here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So we return money all the time. The money I'm counting is simply the money that we return to the Commonwealth.
Thank you so much, and I wish you luck in restoring some honesty and integrity to the offices.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, and I apologize in advance to all the members for taking up a couple more seconds of time here. But as I was sitting here thinking about our discussion and thinking about the 17% increase you had requested, and then I heard you talking to Representative Delosier about PCCD, and it just struck me that right now PCCD is going through a pilot program with Results First initiative to get some results-based answers on their budget. Are you familiar with that at all? I mean, it just recently just came up.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with what you're referring to, and I would just clarify.
Pew Charitable Trust has a...
Oh, sure. The JRI process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that's something that would help us in analyzing your budget requests in the future?
Well, first off, just to clarify, we're seeking a 14.8% increase in our budget, not a 17% increase. Second, I was the chairman of the Justice Reinvestment Initiative. I hadn't heard it referred to as you did before. And the Republican and Democratic caucuses of the House and Senate were involved in that process. The chairman was involved in that process. We estimated serious savings as a result of that, over $100 million. We issued that report. I insisted that anything in that report, I had hoped that anything in that report could receive unanimous support from the committee, again, made up of Democrats, Republicans, outside experts, and it in fact did. I believe that $100 million is the minimum savings there. I think that you could probably double or triple that if the House and Senate were to, take some bolder steps on criminal justice reform. I didn't feel that it was my place or the place of those on that committee, sort of an unelected appointed committee, to be, sort of making broader policy judgments that clearly had some, some disagreements in the legislature. But I think you could save $100 million right there and go beyond that if you're willing to, go further.
Specifically, what I'm referring to is they now have a modeling system. Pew does to takes results that are accomplished and they set it up with PCCD right now as a pilot program. And it just essentially will give you a return on investment almost, I guess you would say. And I'd love to hear, as it progresses, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure.